I expect James Harden to have a huge bounce-back game and the Rockets to win. Even if Kawhi plays, it's hard to imagine he'll be 100% of himself. And in the games where the Rockets get hot from outside, you're not going to beat them. By the way, that's why they have, when we talk about who has the best chance to compete against Golden State, I like the Spurs to beat the Rockets. But, again, I think it comes down to the same thing it comes down to in the Eastern semifinals here, in the sense that whoever has home team is going to win this series. I think San Antonio is going to win, especially if Kawhi gets a little rest before Game 7. But if there's any chance against the Warriors in the West, it is the Rockets, because they have the proverbial puncher's chance. Since D'Antoni has decided that what he did in Phoenix wasn't even radical enough, didn't even exploit the rules enough, he was going to double down in Houston and jack up all those threes on nights where those guys hit like 50%. You really can't beat them. I don't see how you do it. And I expect Harden to be so motivated for this game after he choked. I mean, it was a choke job in Game 5. It's a pivotal playoff game. This is where you forge your reputation in NBA history, and he choked. I think he's aware of that. I think he wants to redeem himself, and certainly if he has a big Game 6, and if they win in a Game 7, he also has a big Game 7, no one's going to remember Game 5. But if he comes up small here, they will. I think that's sufficient motivation for their best player, for their MVP candidate, Harden, particularly against a depleted San Antonio team, without Tony Parker, with a compromised Kawhi Leonard at best, with a Manu Ginobili who's unlikely to play at the level he played when those two teams last met. I like the Rockets in Game 6.
Well, obviously I do, because I picked them to win this series. But I got to tell you something. I just finished reading a headline in the Houston Chronicle, today's Houston Chronicle. And you know what it said, Max? It said, you're going to need more than 7 to get to Game 7. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I agree with that. Because what did I say about what transpired in Game 5?
You did.
I talked about the minutes that were logged by James Harden. I talked about the fact that he had the ball in his hands all the time. I talked about the fact that Mike D'Antoni only went 7 deep. I'm looking at a Sam Decker on the bench, no playing time. I'm looking at Montrezl Harrell. He didn't get any playing time, particularly with Nene being out for the rest of the postseason due to his injury. You have got to have fresh bodies in the playoffs coming in and out of games. You got to find a way to manipulate it at some point in time over the first 3 quarters while remaining within striking distance in order to be at full strength come the fourth quarter. And I appreciate the great Isaiah Thomas. By the way, Max Kellerman, I'm not talking about Isaiah Thomas at Boston. I'm talking about the Isaiah Thomas,
the original,
who gave me permission yesterday to call him OG Isaiah Thomas. That's what he wants to be called from now on. OG, that's what he wants to be called. That's what he told me to call him. OG Isaiah Thomas came on my radio show, ESPN Radio, yesterday afternoon, and he said that my breakdown was absolutely on point about D'Antoni in Game 5 when it came to Harden. He said, if you're going to play him for 43 minutes, take him off the ball. Put somebody like a Patrick Beverley and Eric Gordon and others. Just let them dribble the ball. Let them hide in the corner for a few possessions.
Isaiah would play all kinds of minutes on the ball and still ball out, even if he was hurt.
Time out. No. If you remember, go back in time, Max. Seriously. Not only did Isaiah Thomas come off the ball sometimes, you saw Joe Dumars handling the ball.
Sure.
Hold on. You saw Vinny the Microwave Johnson come off the bench and he get on the ball. There were ways to spell for Isaiah even when he was on the court. That's what I'm saying.
My point is,
D'Antoni's got to do with Harden.
Look, I agree with your general point. It was a very good point you brought up yesterday, even, when it comes to minutes. But I don't think it's necessarily just to adjust your lineup for the fourth quarter. I think coaches too often go with who they trust late in the fourth quarter and in overtime, when, in fact, you'll notice sometimes simply fresh legs off the bench, even in crunch time, are a huge advantage against tired legs. So I understand that. Not just setting up Harden for late, sometimes even late in the game, bringing those guys off the bench, it's a huge advantage when everyone else is fatigued. But the Isaiah Thomas point is interesting to me because Isaiah Thomas, whatever Chuck Daly was doing with him at different times, there were many playoff games that I remember where Isaiah Thomas played huge minutes, played on the ball a lot, was hurt in a way that no one should be able to perform under pressure. And there were no excuses with his performances in crunch time. And if you want to say, well, of course, because Isaiah Thomas was one of the most one of the toughest, most excellent pressure players in the history of the NBA. I agree with you. That had a lot to do with his greatness. It's one of the reasons he's actually become an underrated all-time great, Isaiah Thomas. I don't know who you want over him with the game on the line. He was tremendous. But that's the standard that we're comparing guys like Harden to. The best of this era is going to be compared to the best of previous eras.
But
and James Harden, now a perennial MVP candidate, the engine of his team, no one's going to remember the excuses. They're going to remember the way he played in crunch time.